Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 6. You ready?
Those Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
Those Fantasy Goodfellas.
All right, before we get started, let me remind you a little bit about this video. We don't put a lot of weight into rankings because we know some of the players that you have, you're going to start regardless of these rankings. So this is really kind of talking about their trends, who they're matched up against, and maybe you'll have some questions on who you should start in your lineup. And that's what we hope that this video shows you. Let's just get started. At number 1, we have Tyreek Hill, home versus the Carolina Panthers. Now, Tyreek Hill is having a great season. In week 5, he had 181 yards and 1 TD. Now, if you want to look at this chart to see how he's doing, it seems like every other game he's having an explosive game. I think this is the week where you're going to see Tyreek Hill is going to continue and not have a down week after every other week. And I think that's what's going to trend this week. At number 2, we have Jamar Chase, home versus the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Jamar Chase had his best game, I believe, as a wide receiver. And he had 192 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. And he was the second best ranked wide receiver. Now, on the season, we always kind of want to look at this and see the trends. In week 3, he kind of was the 11th best receiver. In week 5, he was the second best. So it looks like that Cincinnati Bengals offense is warming up, and that's going to bode well for Jamar Chase owners, and that's why he was so high in your draft. He's finally producing, and he won you. I'm sure he helped you win this week. At number 3, we got Davante Adams, home versus the New England Patriots. Last night on Monday Night Football, he had a quiet game. I know some people, Davante Adams is a stellar wide receiver, but if you look at overall the offense, you had 208 yards, 1 TD for Jimmy Garoppolo. He did spread the ball out, and you got Michael Mayer as a tight end, but he spread the ball out between 5 wide receivers. I mean, you got 5 wide receivers. You got 9 different players that caught a ball. So it just shows that offense is getting a lot of action. So, again, Davante Adams is the third is predicted the third best wide receiver. Regardless if he has a down week, you're starting him. At number 4, Stephon Diggs, home versus the New York Giants. Well, the Dolphins lit up the Giants last week. Now you got them going to Buffalo. So what's going to happen? I think that Buffalo offense is going to rock again. So I like my chances here. But look, Stephon Diggs, 121 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown on the season. He only had 1 game less than 100 yards. And if you look at his TD ratio, he had a 3 TD game. And so he got 5 TDs on the season, doing very well. At number 5, you got Cooper Kupp, home versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, we said that Cooper Kupp was going to affect that offense. So we're going to take a look. But look, Cooper Kupp has been out, and he's got 118 receiving yards. He didn't get into the end zone. So last week we predicted, I think there was going to be a couple wide receivers in that ranking. But look, Puka Nacua, he got 71 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. He was the 12th ranked wide receiver. If we want to look at the rankings overall of how all of them did, this is what you got. This is the rankings. You got Cooper Kupp was 17. Puka Nacua with that touchdown was 12. And so you had 2 wide receivers in that ranking. But if you go back and look at that offense, they're doing fairly well. Only 2 TDs, kind of a quiet game. So I expect there to be a lot of touchdowns in week 6. At number 6, A.J. Brown at the New York Jets. Now, there's a lot of weapons in Philadelphia. And so it's really who's going to get the ball. But In week 5, you got A.J. Brown only needed 6 receptions for 127 yards, but he was ranked 13. And if you look at that offense as a whole to see how they're doing, again, it's either A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith that's doing well. But look at this tight end, Dallas Goedert, 117 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Very good game for Jalen Hurts. And he's going against the New York Jets. They should do pretty well as well. At number 7, Puka Nacua, home versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is where I kind of question it again. So last week you had 12th and 17th ranked wide receivers for the Los Angeles Rams. Now all of a sudden you're expecting them to both be in the top 10. I doubt that that's going to happen. And, look, week 5, we understand. Week 5, he had 70 yards, a little over 70 yards and a touchdown. But, again, I think that's pushing it. You're pushing when you expect to have all those wide receivers do well for Los Angeles Rams. I just don't see it happening. I think that's a stretch, and we're going to move on. At number 8, DJ Moore, home versus the Minnesota Vikings. Now, who would have thought DJ Moore would have 3 receiving touchdowns and 230 receiving yards? I don't think anybody. And he did. He exploded. So if you had DJ Moore, even if he was your second or third, your third position wide receiver, he won you some games. But you got a lot of predictions. You got a lot of possibilities. But look, wide receivers, he only passed, Justin Fields passed 230 receiving yards. He had 218 total passing yards, and most of them went to DJ Moore. Now, I don't think that something's wrong there. I think that's an anomaly. You're not going to have that, but that doesn't show me that he's a good quarterback. But he's scoring. They got into the end zone. It was a sloppy game. I don't expect DJ Moore to be ranked that high this coming week, but we'll see what happens. At number 9, Mike Evans, home versus the Detroit Lions. Mike Evans didn't play in week 5. In week 4, he was 3 for 3 on receptions and targets for 40 receiving yards, and Baker Mayfield 246 yards. They're doing fairly well. So we got to see how that works out. At number 10, we got Keenan Allen, home versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I was saying that the Dallas Cowboys has an unbelievable defense, and that fell apart. That didn't show it in week 5. What are we going to expect for that Dallas offense? And I think that's the question. But if you look at Keenan Allen in points this season, in standard scoring, he had, he's scored over 20 twice. And I think that's going to be the question. Can he get into the end zone? Keenan Allen had some flashes of some brilliance, but can he keep it up? He's getting a little bit older. But if you have Keenan Allen, you got to start him. He's the number 1 receiver there. At number 11, CeeDee Lamb at the Los Angeles Chargers. And there's a lot of questions going on with Dak Prescott. Can he get the ball into the end zone? He threw 3 picks. But here you have a quiet game for CeeDee Lamb, 49 receiving yards. But if we look at that quarterback and you say Dak Prescott, 153 yards, but look at this. Do I even have interceptions on there? I don't. I need to put interceptions. He had 3 interceptions. That's terrible. It's going to be interesting to see how he can bounce back from a game that disastrous. But the bright spot was Tony Pollard. Only because he had 29 rushing yards, 35 receiving yards. That just was outside. But big questions up there in Big D. At number 12, you got Deebo Samuel at the Cleveland Browns. Now, Cleveland Browns has been a decent defense, but going against that stellar Dallas defense, does this mean San Francisco's warming up? I think it does. And here you go, Deebo Samuel, he had 85 total yards. Brandon Ayuk, he had 58 yards. But let's just look at that offense as a whole. And Brock Purdy threw 4 touchdowns. It just seems every week Brock Purdy he's just calm in that pocket. I like Purdy. He's just a smooth quarterback. He passes really smooth. But look, George Kittle, he was the one that took all the touchdowns, and he had a stellar game. And but I think San Francisco is going to be all right against Cleveland. I think that offense is just clicking. At number 13, Amon-Ra St. Brown at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I think Amon-Ra did not play, so now you got to go check out to see how bad his injury is, and that's gonna affect him. But Josh Reynolds did really well. He had 76 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. That offense is still clicking, and I think you're going to have a receiver and a tight end in those top 30 rankings, top 15 rankings for tight ends. But I don't expect Reynolds to do good. If Amon-Ra's back, he's going to be the one that Goff targets. At number 14, you got Jalen Waddle, home versus the Carolina Panthers. Now, Waddle had 35 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown, but him on the season as a whole has been kind of quiet. He hasn't broken 100 yards, and I just think he might be a little bit nicked up. He doesn't look like himself, and it's very quiet, but Waddle went high in those drafts, but 1 touchdown on the season and not a game over 100 receiving yards. But that offense is clicking. I just find Miami to be more of a running team, and they're getting into the end zone on the ground. It's not boding well for Jalen Waddle. At number 15, Brandon Ayuk at the Cleveland Browns. Again, so this week we have 2 receivers from the Los Angeles Rams and 2 receivers from San Francisco that are going to be in the top 15. Don't think both of them are going to. But in week 5, you had Brandon Ayuk had 58 receiving yards, and they're just clicking. I don't think they need to do a lot. And when you have a running back and Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason did good. Look at that. When you have a running back in Christian McCaffrey, that's where you got to look at it. Is he's gonna get a lot of touches, 19 attempts, 2 catches. He's the big load of that offense. So it's going to be hard to have all these players in the top rankings. But it's Brandon Ayuk. San Francisco's clicking. At 16, you got DeAndre Hopkins versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I keep on saying I was wrong last week, right? You got DeAndre Hopkins was the 8th ranked wide receiver in week 5. And so he bounced back. And now all of a sudden you got him in the top 16. I'm going to have to eat my words. But DeAndre Hopkins in week 5 had 140 receiving yards. And if we look at that offense, 140 receiving yards, looks like the majority went to Hopkins. And that is how it played out. And Derrick Henry had a quiet game. So, you're a Hopkins owner. It finally paid off for you. I don't like him. So I think this is, again, a little high. But I just want to look at one more thing. Look at his rankings on the season, because sometimes you forget, right? So it's the first time he went over 100 yards. Otherwise, he was less than 70 yards. And TDs, he still has not gotten into the end zone. Now, if you get 140 receiving yards, you're going to be anywhere from 17 to rank 8 like he was. But I don't think he's going to get that type of production. More of a running team. At number 17, Calvin Ridley, home versus the Indianapolis Colts. Calvin Ridley, he had some usage, 122 receiving yards, 14 rushing yards. He was the 10th ranked wide receiver in week 5, and finally he's showing up. But that offense finally clicked. And if you look, I always like to see how good that offense is. What are they doing? But they have 8 different wide receivers. They have 7 different players caught a pass in week 5. Trevor Lawrence still ain't getting in the end zone. That's the only thing that kind of scares me about it. But if you can get 140, 130 receiving yards, you're going to do pretty well. At number 18, DK Metcalf at the Cincinnati Bengals. What to expect here? Now, is the Seattle Seahawks, are they clicking? Are they gelling? I'm worried about Seattle Seahawks players, but DK Metcalf had 34 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown, and that got him in the top. Oh, that was week 4. But that got him there. So can DK Metcalf get 34 receiving yards and a touchdown? I think he can do it every week. So don't have a problem here. Should be a shootout, but Cincinnati's playing really well. At number 19, Nico Collins, home versus the New Orleans Saints. Nico had a quiet game in week 5. I think it was the first time, besides week 3, where he kind of hurt you a little bit. He was kind of winning some games for you, and in week 5, he didn't do too much. Kind of regressed a little bit. At number 20, you have Amari Cooper, home versus the San Francisco 49ers. This should be an interesting game. And the reason why that should be an interesting game is because, it should be an interesting game. The problem is Deshaun Watson hurt, and that's what we got to look out for. But Amari Cooper can light it up. I'm curious to see that offense in week 6. I wouldn't put it past anybody that they have a regressed week. At number 21, Adam Thielen at the Miami Dolphins. Now here I just want to say Adam Thielen was the 5th ranked wide receiver in week 5. And in week 6, they got him at 21. But he's been quiet besides that, right? But in week 5, 170 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. If you're like me, sometimes you don't have all these stats. But it looks like here he had 145 yards in week. And so what I definitely want to do is look at how he was ranked each week leading up to that. So he was in the top 30 3 out of 5 weeks. So it looks like he can do that again. I like what he's got going on. And the one other thing I want to take a look at, because if you're not paying attention, you got Bryce Young, had 247 yards and 3 TDs. And Adam Thielen was the recipient of most of that. So I think that can happen again. At number 22, Garrett Wilson, home versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have a good defense. The Jets kind of seem to be clicking, but can they keep it going? Garrett Wilson is a threat, but they don't have a lot of weapons. If you look at week 5, they only passed to 2 different wide receivers. That's not good. And if you're only focused on those 2 wide receivers, then you can kind of shut them down if you do a defensive game plan against them. So I think with the Philadelphia's defense, they can kind of shut them down again. So I don't really expect big things from the New York Jets offense, especially with Garrett Wilson. At number 23, Chris Olave at the Houston Texans. Now, this is kind of, he got into the end zone. If he didn't get into the end zone, it would have been outside the top 30 ranking. And again, I like to kind of look at their rankings, see how they kind of do. And, I'm concerned about that New Orleans Saints offense, but that's not cutting it. But he was in the top 33 of the 5 weeks. So I think he can make it again. He's going to get the Houston Texans. Should do okay. Number 24, Devontae Smith at the New York Jets. Now, the New York Jets defense is not bad. So they gamble a little bit, and they could do some damage. So, again, we're going to have 2 Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers in the top 30. I don't expect that to happen this week. I expect one to do well and the other not. At number 25, Marquez Brown at the Los Angeles Rams. I like Josh Dobbs. I like Joshua Dobbs. He just seems to be comfortable getting into that offense. I like what they got going on there. And here you got Randall Moore. And if we look here, Randall Moore was the 28th best wide receiver. You had Marquez Brown, who was the 16th. So you had two Arizona Cardinal wide receivers ranked in the top 30 for week 5. And again, we are saying Marquez Brown is going to be the recipient of it. I think that can happen again. Have no problem seeing him in the rankings. Should do well. At number 26, you got T. Higgins home versus the Seattle Seahawks. Now, T. Higgins, it's one of those things. He's been banged up, hasn't been himself, and now you're throwing him in there. I like Tyler Boyd more to kind of make those rankings than T. Higgins. And if you look at Boyd, you have 6 catches for 39 yards. Joe Burrow, he's slinging it now. But again, it's the Jamar Chase show. He's let it be known that he's open every day, like 7-Eleven, 24 hours a day. I think the ball is mostly going to go to him. I don't expect T. Higgins to be in the top 30. At 27, you got Christian Kirk home versus the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Christian Kirk had 78 receiving yards. He was the 26th best wide receiver in week 5. But I like Calvin Ridley. Can he slip in there? I think there's a chance. And if you just want to see how Christian Kirk did over the season, had one game over 100 yards. And if you look at that, only one game with a TD. So it's going to be questionable if he can slip in there. But I like Calvin Ridley a little bit better. But Christian Kirk needs the score to slip in. At number 28, you got Zay Flowers at the Tennessee Titans. Now, Zay Flowers is slowly moving up to be the best wide receiver there. But, we know in the Ravens, it's all about the Lamar Jackson. It's all about Lamar Jackson and what he can do on the ground. He can sling it, but, you got a lot of different wide receivers there that he can throw to. So I would say Zay Flowers can do well if he's the number 1 receiver, the number 1 target. But he needs to get those. He needs to get the receptions. Here he had 11 targets and caught 5 of them. Needs to improve on that, and then he can slip into the top 30. At number 29, Chris Godwin at home versus the Detroit Lions. Now, I don't believe Tampa played last week. So if we go back to the week before, Chris Godwin was back, right? Had 114 receiving yards. So if I want to see what he did, on the season so far and where he was ranked, don't worry about the week 5. That should be a bye. At number 4, he was the 13th best. Is he warming up? Are they back? Can Baker Mayfield throw it? I don't know. Again, I don't know if that offense has got that much firepower to put 2 wide receivers in the top 30. At number 30, you got Michael Pittman Jr. at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, here you go. I said that there might be a quarterback controversy a little bit, right? Anthony Richardson versus Minshew. And I think this kind of says it all, right? There was no Anthony Richards probably started, but look at Gardner Minshew. If Gardner Minshew starts and plays, Michael Pittman should have no problem being in the top 30. If Richardson plays, I don't expect that to happen. All right. But that is the rankings and the stats and the information for week 6. I hope these videos help you with your own lineups and make some key decisions. Don't forget to put some questions in the comments and we'll try to answer it. Otherwise, thanks for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
The ruling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.